Well, hello, everyone. We are here for the post show. My name is Perry. I'm one of the pastors here, and we also have
Andy.
Austin.
Layla.
And we are here to discuss today's service and just kind of, have a little fun with that. But before we jump into that, I just thought of this. Are any of you doing a trunk for trunk or treat?
I think Andy needs to.
Well, I think after our little group me message about CYM, yes, either, I will be helping, or yes, my trunk will be backed up, like I like to say in the pre-show, to help out. Yes.
Nice. Good. Do you want to reveal what your trunk is going to look like? Or
We haven't even talked about it yet. I'm going to talk to my group tonight, see what they want to do.
That's right. Andy may have had his arm twisted to do one with his small group.
Yeah. Because in years past, I've asked, and they're like, no.
We're not asking this time. We're just
making it a competition.
Yeah. How about you, Austin?
I haven't really thought of it a whole lot. I have barely a trunk. If you don't know my car's not that big. But I'm sure I can find room. And where do I go to sign up to put my trunk up?
So you can do that on our app or the website under events and fill it out right there.
Trunk or treat. Excellent segue.
There you go.
You could just fill your trunk up with candy.
Yeah, there you go.
They just take it out of the trunk if it's that small.
Even better.
You probably won't win the competition if you do that, but the kids will still like it.
The kids would love it.
voted,
Yeah.
you
Kids,
would win.
yeah.
That was
We're not
totally
having kids
full.
vote. They're not going to vote for them. So.
Yeah.
It's rigged.
Yep. So if you don't have the app, you can go and search Church Center on in your app store, and it will pop up. It's a more generic app, and then the steps to set it up are super easy. It walks you through it. So that's where you can go and sign up.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, Layla, are you doing one?
I don't think so, because I mean, somebody's got to walk with my kids. I guess I could just let them go
guess.
rogue though too, and they've just cut in and out of line.
you
Or
walk
like,
with them.
whose kids are these?
Yeah, rogue children are fine.
Yeah. But I was pondering it because I like that we, sidebar here, I like that we market things in our stalls of our bathrooms.
Yeah.
So as I was doing my morning tinkle, I was like, one, I love this marketing. Whoever did the design did a great job.
Yep.
And then I was like, maybe I should do a trunk.
Yeah.
I like it.
That was the extent
yes.
of my
Where
thought.
I do my best thinking, so yeah.
Yeah.
On the throne.
Yeah, if you come here in person, there's probably a QR code that's going to be looking you in the face as you
got nothing
take care
else
of
to
your
do
morning tinkle, as Layla calls it. And you can get
And
signed
now
up there.
I'm calling it that too, moving forward.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
What about you, Perry?
I am going to be doing a trunk, I believe, because, I'm going to be partnering with Adam Woolheis because we are co-leaders together. I have no idea what we're going to do. I haven't put any thought to it, but we're going to talk with our guys today. I lead a small group for 10th grade boys this year.
Hey, change it up.
10th grade boys, and we're going to figure it out.
Yep.
Do you have high competition?
Me, like
Just in
as a
general.
who I am.
Yeah. So like if you weren't to win this.
Oh, I am a highly competitive person, but will I care if I lose this? No, not at all.
Oh, okay. So it's selective competition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
No, it's selective caring about what I win or lose at. I'm always competitive. That's the
Sure.
problem. Yeah.
Okay.
We're not going to talk about
We were talking about competition earlier
We were, yeah.
on the pre-show, and I was like, I feel like Perry's really competitive.
I am a competitive guy. I've matured a lot from
congratulations.
when I was a kid, and so I don't get angry.
The Lord really tested me
Anymore.
the last few weeks of Water Wars.
Yeah, Andy may have been on the losing team, but anyway, let's
winners
get
in my heart.
to the rest of the post show.
Yes.
We've had plenty of time to hang out, have a good time. But what a part of this service stood out to you,
You know,
or
me,
the highlights?
Okay, I'll give you a low light, was the fact that he called Danielson's famous technique the stork.
Dave.
I was a little upset. I'm like, no, it's the crane technique.
Yep.
But anyway, that's okay.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it's just cool to see all of these different, people that are known for their fighting skills, and we don't really think of being a spiritual warrior in the same way. And I
Sure.
like that how he talked about how, Bruce Lee fought leading with his strong hand, and how Conor McGregor does this, but how the prayer warrior, spiritual warrior prays, has a completely different stance, which isn't what you would think a fighting stance is. So that was pretty cool to me. That kind of stood out. As somebody that likes martial arts movies and martial arts and action stuff. So I was like, good job, Dave. You're you're meeting me at my level, which is great.
That's important.
That's awesome. Cool. How about the rest of you? What stood out? What were the highlights?
Yeah, I'll go with the highlight and the low light, and I'll start with my low light, which makes me think of my hair. But we're not talking about those highlights and lowlights.
Okay.
Okay. You guys have missed me, right?
Of course we did.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, can we take a moment about the Myrtle Beach story with when he almost gets gutted, I think is what he said.
Yep.
And was like, I'm okay to die right now. I was just thinking about, like, if I was in that moment, I probably would have piddled myself.
Tinkle.
Tinkle, and there's not a throne.
That is a terrible tinkle.
Yes, for real.
But yeah, I'm just like, man, Dave's so awesome. He's such a brave guy. Like, that was a cool story.
Yeah.
It was a cool story.
It was a cool story.
So that's my low light. Highlight, reining it in here, I really appreciated towards the end of the message when Dave was summarizing like what you should pray for the upcoming generation, because I get a little overwhelmed and like, how can I make my prayers the most like fullest? So yeah, I don't know if we'll get into those details, but I really appreciated that portion. I like the whole message, but
What
I really liked it.
about that part? What were the things that like really stood out to you where it's like, oh no, this will help my prayer life for you personally?
Well, I really like structure, so I felt like
Sure.
it helps set me up for success to kind of have like pray for this, pray for this, pray for this. Sometimes my prayers will
Zigzag.
Yeah.
All over the place. Yeah, mine do too.
and I'm like, wait, what was I praying for?
Wait a
5
minute.
minutes ago?
You ever get off on Reddit
know.
trails and like to?
yeah, never. But like as he was talking about the few things, like when he was talking about biblical faithfulness, spiritual maturity, like confidence, like I was immediately picturing how I would want to lean into that for my kids, especially.
Right.
So
Right. Awesome.
I just connected with it.
Very good. I love it. How about you, Austin?
So I don't have any low lights because I thought this service was I really enjoyed this service that we had today from top to the bottom, from the start of worship where we sang about milk and honey, which reveals God's promises. It talks a lot about that in the book of Exodus and throughout a lot of scripture. And I think we all want that for each one of us, is for us to all be in that land of milk and honey one day. But that takes a real impact that we have to have in other people's lives. And I appreciated part of the aspect that might have been overlooked a little bit in Dave's message when he talked about prayer, is also having the relationships with some of the people that you are going to be praying for as well. And especially for this younger generation that is coming up, having a relationship with them, so then you know who you are praying for, so that your prayers can be more meaningful and purposeful, and you can actually customize it a little bit well instead of that generic prayer, which is incredibly powerful. And I encourage everyone to be able to do that just in general for people. Find somebody that you can be praying for as well, so then their lives can be changed, so then they can change the lives of other people. So then when we enter that land of milk and honey, it can be a little bit overflowing a little bit.
I like it.
Can I make a request and not have to sit next to Austin next time? Because his answers just blew mine out of the water. Again, I'm not overly competitive, but I was just like, dang it, I just lost.
Andy,
really
it's
good.
not a
I
competition.
know, but it was just such a good answer that I wish I had thought.
Maybe you should go in like an order of Austin and then me.
And
And I'll bring it down a little bit, and then Andy will feel better.
We don't need to boost Andy's ego. Come on now. Yeah.
It was a wonderful answer, Austin.
Okay, well, good. Those are all good thoughts. Let's go ahead and skip on here. All right. When you were a kid,
Oh my gosh.
who was a person that would pray for you the way Dave explained today? Do you know of anybody like that? If so, share.
It's so funny that this is one of your questions, because I was literally thinking about this as Austin was, going through his wonderful answer, because I really liked that part too, where Dave was highlighting like making sure that you connect with somebody. But for me, like, of course my parents, but especially my mom. And like at the time, it was like cringe moment when she was like, "I'm praying for a wonderful young man to come into your life, Layla." And when
Wow,
you're
thanks,
young,
Mom.
you're like, "Okay, Mom, like I'm 16, I'm not getting married and having kids." And fast forward time, but I do remember those. It's like it instilled something in my brain, and she just constantly was telling me about praying for this and praying for that. And then now I feel like she takes credit for it, of like, I prayed for Tony. Okay. But I think it's kind of like, it's neat to be able to do that for our upcoming generation, and then to share it with them, right? Like you matter to me so much, and I recognize these small things in you, and then, you know, like I took it another step further and like prayed for this, or like this one conversation, like even though they might not say like, wow, that means a lot, or hey, this is kind of cringy, deep down it meant something to me clearly, right? I'd never tell my mom that. Hopefully she's not listening right now, because I wouldn't be like, you know, but that's, you know, and I know that there were other people too, but my mom was just, she constantly fed my brain, and to me, like I'm praying for this, I'm praying for that.
Right. Yeah. My parents definitely would pray for me on a consistent basis as well. My grandma and grandpa, they would tell us all the time how they were praying for us, and I knew that they were such prayer warriors. And then there always seemed to be all these old ladies at my church. I remember like Mrs. Kruger, Mrs. Cripps. I don't even know their first names, or I think I know a couple of them, but like all these old ladies who were just, they would be like, hey, I'm praying for you. And it was always very comforting to know that. It also was kind of like, okay. Like I did have that little bit of like a, well, yeah, you're a sweet old lady, but why me kind of thing, you know? But yeah, I had some people like that in my life as well. How about you guys? You have anybody like that you can think of?
Yeah, typical, dad type thing. Because my dad we would every night gather in the same room so we could pray, and we do our standard prayer. But then my dad would like tailor everything for what each kid had coming up. So like, please help Andy with basketball. Please help Matt with track. Please help Susie with this. So he would take time to do that. But I remember 8th grade year, confirmation, we found out who our confirmation partner was.
What is confirmation, Andy?
Confirmation is when you become old enough in a certain school to take communion. Is how
you grew up
Lutheran Missouri Synod.
That's right. Okay.
So it was very kind of more strict method.
Yep.
So you had to go through a certain thing, memorize stuff, and then say it. So I found out that Mrs. Otter, who was one of my good friends' grandmothers, was my confirmation partner. She gave me a gift, and then every time after that, she would remind me or let me know she would be praying for me. And at first I was like, oh, great, cool. But then that was 8th grade. When senior year came around and she came to my graduation party, she gave me this Bible thing, and she had been highlighting things for 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
So she's been thinking about me and gave that to me then. I was just like, oh my gosh. It was just,
awesome.
not something you ever expected.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I was cool. But now that I'm older, I'm like, wow, that was really thoughtful and impactful for me. So yeah,
That's
Mrs.
awesome.
Otter. She was awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome,
I would have to go with kind of the typical answer. My parents were very impactful. My grandparents as well, both on my dad's side and my mom's side, were definitely praying for me, and I could definitely feel that. And I think that is incredibly important, especially as you're growing up. I think a lot of young people are just looking for people who are fighting for them, who care about them, and who see them. And I think if you take the time to be able to do that and be able to invest in that, even if they don't necessarily appreciate or see the awkwardness of, how do I respond to say somebody's praying for me? I think knowing that somebody is out there caring for you, I think really does make an impact on them.
Yeah, someone who in our church right now who does that, at least for my boys, and I know many others, is Marlene Prather.
Yes.
I mean, she has pictures and all sorts of different things all over her fridge, and I know that woman is praying for the students that are here consistently, and she is definitely a prayer warrior for them, which is pretty awesome.
She's like a prayer super warrior.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So, next question. Explain a time, if you can, where you have gone to battle in prayer. Dave mentioned that, going to battle in prayer. Do you have a time in your life where you did that? It's a deeper one.
Yeah.
I'll go first on this one.
Okay.
So I remember, there have been many times in this, but I remember when we were at our previous church and there was just a lot of leadership conflict going on there, and just being like, why is this happening? Not fully understanding, and just having really no other option but to just pray. And pray for wisdom, pray for guidance. I've mentioned before, that's what led me here eventually. But man, it was constantly praying for all of the leaders that were involved, the church itself, my own part in it of like, okay, God, what should I do? What should I say? That was a pretty heavy time for me. And I just felt like it was a spiritual battle going on all the time. So that was one for me that I had.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that, especially this isn't the only church that I've ever gone to. There's been other churches that I've been a part of, and there's a time when, because I love what I do up on stage, playing up on stage, doing the guitar, doing all that stuff. And I remember there was a time when that felt like it was taken away from me, and that connection that I had with God, that I poured a lot of time, poured my heart, poured my energy into, was gone. And I remember during that period in between that previous church and where I'm at right now, just going to God in prayer quite a bit during that, mostly because I needed something for myself, mostly because I felt an emptiness, I felt a void in there. And I just remember asking for another chance, asking for another opportunity. And I can see the work that God was able to do, because it clearly has led me to where I am here, and it clearly has led to new opportunities. So
Sure.
I've seen the impact that prayer can do on my own life, and it's been incredibly powerful.
And what's crazy is you're like the only guitar player I've ever seen on a worship team. So if God ever took you anywhere else, there's probably a spot for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is.
How about you guys? Any times that you can remember when you went to battle in prayer?
Yeah, not to the extent that you were, but when a couple of years ago, when Ange and I were leading the youth group, I was in constant battle. I'm like, I know what I'm called to do. It is not this. Please put somebody else here.
Please find someone.
So it's not like a spiritual battle. It was more of just, battling my own awareness of what I can bring to it. And I know that I was there for a reason, but I'm like, God, I know I'm here for a reason, but there is an end in place, and there's the right person that's going to come in, and kind of doing that same prayer battle right now too.
What I love about that, though, is that oftentimes we think of these prayer battles and these things that are going on, and we assume that it is only kind of when things are really, really terrible.
Right.
When things are, for lack of a better term, things are hitting the fan. And it's like, man, if that's going on, it's more natural for us to like go to battle in prayer. But oftentimes when maybe it's not as strenuous or not as like dire, we maybe don't go to prayer as much, or we don't think of it as much, or even into just the day to day. And having gone through some of those other experiences, it reminds me to be able to pray for like our leadership here today. Where we're all getting along really, really well, and things seem to be going pretty well. Obviously, there's always room to improve, but it's constantly praying for that to continue, because I've experienced that it doesn't always. And the same for health, and the same for, safety for our kids and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's not always good. So when it is good, trying to remember that and to stay ready, to stay in battle mode can be difficult sometimes, but it's so important. Layla, did you have any stories that you wanted to share?
It's the only thing that I could think of at the moment, because it's just been a fresher experience. In February, my real father passed away, and probably wasn't a really like long battle in prayer. I mean, the whole extent of everything ended up being like a couple days, like a long weekend. But it's probably the most turmoil I've had while praying. I didn't even know what I was praying for. It was a really damaged relationship, and I didn't know how to handle a lot of it. The outcome, obviously he passed, and that's not what I was praying for, so it was just very confusing. But as I've had these past months and weeks to digest it more, I know ultimately it was what what God wanted. And at first I felt like I lost my battle in prayer, but having again time to digest on it, I don't think that was the case at all. It's a really deep example. So I'll just kind of summarize that's probably the example that comes to mind.
No, I love that too, because sometimes, and even, maybe even the way Dave presented it today, sometimes we can think that, if I pray for something, yeah, it might be a journey and it might be difficult at times, but eventually it's going to work out the way I'd like it to. Sure. That's what we think of, but that's not always the case. I know the example I brought up. It didn't end exactly the way I wanted it to. This didn't end the way you wanted it to. And, man, I think part of the posture of being in prayer is submitting to God's direction.
Accepting what comes, even if it's not what you want.
Yeah, and that's hard sometimes because we don't see the bigger picture. We don't know all that he knows. And man, that can be difficult, but ooh.
I think you brought up something good too. Reflecting back on when you've gone through those things. And then when you're in a different place mentally, sometimes you can see that, okay, even though I felt like this was a complete failure of a prayer, it really wasn't. And I just needed some time to process what happened. And now I can look back at it and go, oh, well, that was really something that helped me out. So those are definitely good examples. Really.
And I feel like God was very intentional about the preceding weeks and even months and days, because it was comments from others of like, well, look what came out of the situation, or like, look how you reconnected with your siblings, or you know what I mean? And it's like God put other people, because I wasn't, right? I'm so wrecked emotionally that and angry and processing. So just to piggyback off of your comment, it's like when he wants you to connect something, it will happen.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat. Gives me
pretty smart.
talking about it.
Smart guy up there.
And he wants to, more than anything, he wants to go through this stuff with us. Right. And man, there's so many negative things that happen in life that are heartbreaking for him.
Yeah.
Which is a way deeper conversation than we're probably going to get in today. We'll get to asking questions later.
Yeah. Ask that one, because I want Dave and Steve to go over it later.
But I have one more question. I'm not sure if it's going to show up here correctly, because there's... Yes, it is. All right. For anyone who has never prayed consistently, how would you suggest that they do this? Layla, you mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but... What are some tips? What are some thoughts?
Well, I still personally connected with that structure. And I think for me, like, literally having like what I want to pray about documented too helps. Again, if you're like me and you're like ting 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 all the thoughts, and then you're like, you're praying for what you need to get groceries for, and you're like, wait a second, that's not
Wrong
what
list.
I came here for. Although yes, if you could please make sure that these Nutella sticks are in stock, God, that would be great.
If they were a little bit cheaper, that'd be nice too.
Cherry on top. But the other thing that quickly came to mind was having like a support buddy or somebody else to help keep you accountable. A couple years ago, we did like I'm trying to think of the name of it. Was like something we did together, and we came in and we were praying all together, with the staff here at Connections. It was the name is right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't think of it. But we were like following along with this prayer guided book, and it was all about like.
Was it Rooted?
It was something circle
No, it
in
was
the
something
name.
right before you got here, because Kim Claus
Circle
was in
Makers?
charge of it.
Something along those lines.
That sounds like
I mean,
what
as
could
soon
be.
as we end, I'm
Mosaic?
going to be like, oh.
That was something that was before me.
Could be.
Yeah. But anyways, it was the first thing I've ever done where I was praying alongside with others, and it helped keep me on track and I felt like I was more accountable with it. And it just was a mind-blowing experience. I'll never forget it. It was so neat. It was also terrifying because I was praying in front of people, and I was like, I don't speak very good, but I got a lot out of putting myself out there and being uncomfortable in the uncomfortable. And
having accountability when it comes to any spiritual discipline, when it comes to just being a Christian, if you don't have accountability, it is hard to do.
Yeah.
Having someone who can do that for you is a game changer. That's good. Andy, you got any thoughts?
Sure. I'd say it might sound dumb, but like set aside when you're doing your morning routine, like it sounds but I pray in the shower because there's nothing else for me to do.
There's nothing wrong
And
with that.
that's 10, 15 minutes, and I'm just talking. Like I don't sit there and go start off with folding my hands, dear Lord. I'm just taking my shower, and I'm like, dear Lord, this is what's going on, and I just talk to him.
Yeah.
And I sometimes even call the absurdity of it. I'll be like, I know you know what I'm talking about here. And then I'll be like, wait a minute. It's just like, if one of my kids out there, like, who is he talking to? Because honestly, I think that's what God would want. I know as a parent, I want my kids to have just an open conversation with me and not feel forced. So just start that way. Set yourself a little time, or if you're driving to work, you don't have to close your eyes when you pray all the time. So you're in your car. There's nobody else there. Pray then. Like that.
We would prefer you don't close your eyes while you're praying in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See? But that is a time you can turn off the radio, or you can turn on some sort of praise music. And if that gets you in the mood, then just something that helps you want to do it.
Yeah.
And a place you can do it daily, because you have to drive to work every day.
Yep.
You have to take a shower every day, unless you work at home like me, and that's every other day. But yeah, just those things help me become more consistent in prayer.
Sure. Yeah, I think having a routine is huge. A couple things Layla mentioned, although she didn't call it this, but like a list of prayers, prayer requests, things that you think you should be praying for. Oftentimes we'll say to people like, hey, I'm praying for you. But then if you don't actually put some sort of record of that, it's really easy to forget that, So I have a prayer list that I've got. I find journaling to be really helpful too, although I don't do it as much as I'd like. But man, whenever I journal, it just seems to be like a super rich prayer time for me. But a routine time, I think if I had to pick one thing, I think that's the number one thing I'd say is like, hey, pick a time where you're going to spend a good 5 to 15 minutes of just prayer. So that way you just have it set and you make it a habit. I think it's huge.
Yep.
But do you guys have any other thoughts about today's message or prayer in general?
No, I think once you start doing it, you start to see the benefits of it. It's one of those things where, and you don't always see, like you said, what you want, but something, and there's just something about it. You're in more communication with God. I just find I hear him more often when I'm in constant prayer. And when I fall out of that, it's just easier for me to fall into typical Andy mode of just doing what I do and not hearing him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Taking time to listen. It seems a little awkward at first when you're sitting there praying and then you literally just stop.